Hello and welcome. My name is Tania from Snaffle Travel. Snaffle Travel is an equestrian travel company that specialises in group tours. We go to events like Badminton horse trials, Burghley horse trials, Royal Windsor Show, Chio Aachen in Germany, the World Equestrian Games, and Calgary, and numerous other events. I'd like to welcome you to our first Zoom chat series. We're going to host various equestrian personalities, from commentators like Sarah tonight. We've got FEI judges, we've got Olympic riders, dressage riders, and also lots of different personalities in the equestrian realm. Tonight I've got the pleasure in welcoming Sarah Nevile from the Voice of Australian Equestrian. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks very much, Tanya. Great to be here.
Sarah is an event commentator at the Melbourne and Adelaide 3-day events. They're two of the biggest eventing competitions in Australia. You're also an eventing rider, and you're also a professional counsellor.
Yeah.
Now, I first met you at the World Equestrian Games in 2018 at Tryon in the US.
Yes.
And remember on cross country day when the hurricane, we didn't know whether we were going to be able to watch it, what was going to happen, but we were lucky.
Yeah.
Then unfortunately the show jumping was postponed on the Sunday, so I think you flew out on the Monday?
Yes, I flew out on the Monday
to
the UK.
Yeah, it was an interesting event, wasn't it?
It was fascinating. It was great to be travelling with, because I am solo at the moment, and so it was lovely to be able to travel with a group of like-minded individuals to go to a big event like the WEG. You know, the weather was very inclement and very difficult for the organisers to have to manage. Not every event has a hurricane bearing down on it. And certainly, you know, we might have kangaroos on the course or bushfires in the region, but it's not very often you get a hurricane. And it was always lovely to watch the world's best battle it out. For me, especially being an event rider, I particularly enjoy watching the cross country.
And it was good because a lot of people stayed away, so it meant there was no queues, and
lots of people.
Sarah, you're an event rider. Tell us about your riding background.
Okay, so eventing has always been a passion of mine. I was very lucky to be born and brought up on a 1,000-acre property, and as quite a young child, I would just head my pony at the 5-bar gates and jump because I was too lazy to actually stop and open them.
Yeah.
I did stop doing that when my father, every time I punched the top rail out, instead of repairing the rail, he would replace the gate with a steel one that hung off the ground, and I wasn't quite brave enough to jump one of those. So that was where my eventing began, if you like, out on the farm, and then progressed up with a number of different horses up the grades and got to what now is 4-star with you know, 6 different horses. And then I've made the journey sort of sideways into eventing commentary, or commentary of equestrian events across the board.
Yeah. For those just joining, I'm talking to Sarah Nevile from the Australian Voice of Equestrian, and she's also a commentator at the Melbourne and Adelaide 3-day events. Now, if you want to, if you've got any questions throughout our chat, just leave a message on the comments below, and I'll be looking at the any questions and we will review them. Okay. So how long have you been a commentator at Melbourne and Adelaide, and how did you sort of manage to get the job?
Okay, so I've been head of commentary for at least a decade at Melbourne, and part of the team for a decade at Adelaide. I've been on the team at Melbourne for 20 years now, and that,
oh wow,
yeah, I'm giving away my age now. But you can't see the wrinkles through Zoom, so that's okay.
I just said when you frowned.
I'll just sit further back and I'll be able to see anything. It actually happened because I think I had 19 years straight where every horse I entered a 3-day event on completed. And for the first time, I had a horse not actually make it to Melbourne International, and was asked by the then chairman of the board at Melbourne International if I would help with the commentary work.
Oh,
and
okay.
at that time, Russ Withers, who commentated at both Sydney and Athens in the live stream, he was head commentator. So I sort of did an apprenticeship, if you like, in inverted commas, with Russ. I was given, I think, what you'd call the shitty jobs.
Oh, okay.
Like out in Melbourne, Siberian winters, in what was then the 10-minute box, interviewing riders before they went cross country, or taking a mobile mic around the back of the mansion to try and keep people up to date with the information about what was happening on course back there. So I spent most of my time back then walking around the cross country, talking to people and interviewing them, if you like. And as things progress, I got more and more into central control. And since I've been in central control, I've not seen a horse go cross country at Melbourne International, because we do cross country blind at Melbourne.
So how long have you been at Melbourne, and then you're now at Adelaide as well?
Yeah, so I got to go to Adelaide because Jill Rolton, the then CEO of Adelaide, heard me commentate at Melbourne and approached me and said, would you be interested in doing it at Adelaide? And I was like, yeah, of course. And so that was a decade ago. So, or I think this year would have been my 10th year at Adelaide. Adelaide and Melbourne are very, very different kettles of fish to commentate on. At Melbourne, you can see the dressage and the show jumping from the commentary box, but you can see no cross country.
And how does it sort of work? Like, so, because obviously when you're commentating, you can't see the cross country. So is it sort of like a team, or people relay to you? How does it sort of work?
Okay, so we commentate from, or the preference is always to commentate from what we call central control. Central control consists of everybody out on course that has a radios into central control to tell them the progress of the horse as they go around the cross country, or if there's any problems, the vets are there. So is a representative from the ground jury. So everybody is there keeping tabs on what's actually happening. And so we have a little, it's a very old fashioned, but it works very well. It's a series of blocks, and it's a long block, and each fence has a photo that sits on my side of the commentary area, and the radio announcers just have the fence number. And then on top of that is a block with a slit in it, and there's a card that gets slotted in there, and on my side it has the rider name, the horse name, their number, their score after dressage, and that block is moved by the radio controllers on the other side of the blocks from me, and they move it across as they get radioed in that the horse has gone over the fence.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I then say, well, number whatever they are is up to fence, and the rest is kind of, I'll politely call hot air. And I did have Stuart Tinney come up to me at Melbourne one year after the cross country and said, you did such a fabulous job, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't get over how you could tell everybody that I was out opening the gallop up across the mansion grounds, and I didn't see where you were seeing that from. And I said,
we're talking about Melbourne, if people aren't sure what we're talking, Melbourne 3-day event,
which is that held across the cross country, goes around the Werribee Park mansion, and which makes it very, very picturesque. And so he was sort of surprised at how I could see that far. And I said, well, actually I can't. What I do is when I walk the course, I make note of where I, as a rider, would open my horse and gallop across the country. And then that I just sort of ad-lib that into where I know the riders are at the time. And so he said, so you don't see anybody go cross country? I say, no, we do it all completely blind. So that's a skill of itself, I think.
Yeah, no, it would be. Yeah, and a lot of people wouldn't realise that. No, that's amazing. So how do you find out about all the information on the riders? Like, when you hear we're at badminton, we'll hear now Mark Todd on, say, charisma, he's won the gold medal, he's, won badminton 10 times, and they sort of give a bit of, how do you find out about that sort of information?
Homework. Some commentators do more homework than others. Some like to do homework on the horse's breeding. So the riders will fill in all the entry forms, will have a commentary sheet.
Yeah.
What I've noticed over the years, the riders are really bad at filling in their commentary sheet. In point of fact, there are a couple that I know personally, and I send off a message and go, if you don't give me a proper commentary sheet, I'm going to make the information up. And so then they actually say, well, you're welcome to make it up because that's much funnier. So occasionally there'll be some funny things being said over the commentary. But what I do is if a lot of riders, if they're professional, will have a website. So I'll Google and have a read of their website. The event organisers, the secretaries, Andrea Goddard in Adelaide and Sue McKay in Melbourne, are both very on board with, as soon as they have their full entries and they know what class everybody's in, they email it off to me, and then I start my Googling from there. I now put all the information on my computer, but I actually, whatever I type on my computer, I write shorthand on the commentary sheets, just in case that there's a technical glitch and the computer doesn't come up on the day. I've got the hard information in front of me. So lots and lots of research, like hours.
And what are the sort of the tricky situations or the difficult moments as a commentator?
Okay. So when you gave me this kind of list of things you might ask me, I was like, oh, that's a hard one. So I've sort of chosen two to illustrate different things. So one was when Sam Lyle had an accident at Melbourne International on cross country, and it was in a very awkward, it was a nasty fall, and it had to be airlifted out. But because of the old trees around the mansion, you had to get certain permissions as to where to land a helicopter. And the difficulty is I'm not allowed to tell people everything that I know unless I've been given the green light to do so.
Okay, yeah.
There is some information that they keep a lid on until we know definitively what's happened. So I could say that the horse was up and fine and that the rider was being attended to, but I know a lot of riders, and so they have my phone number. And of course, in modern technology, they all just send me messages saying what's happening, you need to let us know, la la la. So as soon as I'm given the okay by the course controller, I then fill everybody in on what's actually happening. So that was one awkward moment. The other one's kind of slightly funny. It was when in 2015, I was invited to go and commentate at Blenheim Palace.
Oh, okay. So you've been overseas and commentated? Yep.
And it was a big eye-opener into, like, Blenheim Palace is the biggest 4-star, and it's a 4-star long and a 4-star short in the UK. So it sits in hard behind badminton and Burleigh being 5 stars. And so I was invited, and my very good friend Spencer Sturmey, who's an international commentator of great renown, he helped me get the position. And on cross country day, I was introduced to the other 2 commentators. Because of the number of people in the UK, commentary goes in about 30 to 40 minute spaces, which is really relaxing, and it's not much work at all. To give you a little bit of an insight, Melbourne cross country day, I'm in central control by 7 in the morning. I have 2 20-minute breaks between classes, and the last horse goes cross country at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh God, it's a long day.
And I commentate the whole thing, and I'm very brain dead at the end. It's a very good party then, but I'm very brain dead. Adelaide is easier because there's probably 70 riders cross country day, so it's a much shorter day. And I get to see it on the television screens at Adelaide. But 40-minute increments at Blenheim was kind of blissfully easy. So you rotated as to who you worked with. And I was really lucky. I worked with Spencer, and then with Mike Tucker. And Mike, if anybody knows, he's been really the voice of badminton for years and years and has sadly passed on. But so I was given a very clear instruction of, okay, in England, we commentate. So you will watch horse number 1, leave the start box and commentate on that as they go around. And I have a TV screen in front of me and my notes in front of me, and that's what we're commentating to. I said, okay. I said, and then I will commentate on rider number 2 and watch them go round. So there's no dialogue between the commentators, which is really difficult because in Australia, we constantly dialogue between us because I think that makes for an interesting call. Yeah. Okay, so I got my head around this. Was really very nervous. Okay, got my second stint underway. And I got comfortable, and I was in my 3rd or 4th stint, and I was kind of really in the flow. And Mike's sitting beside me, and at that point, I think it was Chris Burton was sitting in the lead with one of his rides, and Mike's gone, and Tim Price has just completed the course, and the Australians will be delighted because they now have positions number 1 and 2 on the leaderboard. And without even thinking about it, I've turned my mic on and I've said, Mike, I am sure that the Australian selectors would be delighted if Tim wanted to hop across the Tasman and become Australian, but I think he's a New Zealander. And I've had a bit of a chuckle as I'm doing that. Everybody in central control are trying to muffle their laughter. And I've looked at Mike to see him puce with rage that I've actually corrected him, even in a funny, light-hearted way, on air. And he wouldn't speak to me through the rest of the event. So,
is it Pammy Hutton and Carl Hester? They one year were at Badminton. They were commentating, and they were so funny. Everyone was laughing in the grandstands, and you're thinking, what are they laughing at? Because wear it like an earpiece.
That's right.
It's just the commentary, and it made it, because sometimes with eventing dressage, it's the same test for 2 days, but it made for really good entertainment.
Yeah, so that's Spencer and I have had that sort of rapport in the first couple of years that we did Adelaide together, where we did the same sort of thing. People were like, that's very entertaining. So, and we give prizes away at Adelaide too.
Yeah. So anyone that's just tuned in, I'm talking to Sarah Neville. She's the voice of Australian Equestrian, and she commentates at the Melbourne and Adelaide 3-day events. So you said you've commentated at Blenheim. Have you been asked to commentate anywhere else overseas?
I've asked back to Blenheim, but of course now we've got COVID, so that could put the kibosh in that. And I'd like to go to the US, and certainly some of the other events, Blair up in Scotland and things like that. But there is a certain, there is one event organiser in the UK who has very stoutly said when he was TDing at Adelaide that he would never have a female voice commentate cross country because they got far too screechy. And so now every time I see this gentleman at Adelaide or any other event, because he knows I'm not screechy at all, I say, so I'm not so screechy. And he's always, you're never going to let me live that down. Yeah, no, probably not. But yes, so there is a certain amount of gender bias still in commentary.
Yeah, I'd imagine, so have you got a favourite event that you like to overseas?
I've
been to?
No, I like them all for different reasons. I think probably Burleigh has a special place in my heart because at 19 I was based not very far away and was helped strap with a rider at Burleigh, so I sort of got to see it on the inside as well. And that's kind of always lived in my memory, walking the cross-country course. So no, I don't think I have an overseas event that's a favourite. I love watching them. I love modern technology now that I can lie in bed with my laptop and sit and watch live streams even in the middle of the night. Then just close the laptop and go to sleep.
Fabulous, isn't it? Yeah. So obviously you haven't been able to go commentate at Melbourne or Adelaide this year.
all
Did you have any other travel plans or any commentating that you were going to do? Because sort of
well,
stopped?
I've been talking to people in New Zealand, and again going back to the UK, but that's of course been stopped. Melbourne and Adelaide, they pulled the pin very early, which was useful in that it was a very clear and decisive decision,
Yeah.
rather than limping along going, are we, aren't we? I did get the opportunity. I had one commentary gig prior to lockdown, which was a reformed Wangaratta horse trial. So only a small horse trials, but here in Victoria. And that was a new and young committee who had taken on, because it's a lot of work to volunteer as a committee member to run a horse trials. And they did a fabulous job. So that was a great fun weekend up at Wangaratta, just 4 hours up the Hume and back again. And I'm hoping I do Wallaby Hill as well. I have done for the last.
Yeah, that's in Sydney. Yeah.
It's about an hour and a half south of Sydney. So
New South.
Yeah, on the coast. So on the right-hand side of the Hume as you're looking at it, going up from Vic. And last year I flew into Sydney and drove down to Wallaby Hill. Magnificent property and beautiful, really well-run event. That's still on the cards for running this year. That's the first weekend of December. So keep your fingers crossed, and that will be the last commentary gig for the year.
Oh, yes, let's hope, yes. You're also a professional counsellor. How have you sort of found the equestrian community over this COVID time? Like, I mean, like myself, I live on acreage, so it's like I've got a big park, got lots to do. We've got horses, animals and things, but, you know, like people in Melbourne and that live in these apartments and they can't go to the gym, the pool, the restaurant, shopping centre, there's nothing. So it must be horrendous.
It must be very difficult. Yes, for the equestrian community as a generality, I don't think it's been the hardest hit in terms of its isolation factor, because often if you do live with your horses, you're in the country and therefore a little more isolated than those in the city. I certainly know I have a master's in counselling psychology and I've been in private practice for 21 years now. And I have noticed this year in particular, when everybody was in crisis during that first lockdown that was statewide, everybody contracted. So all my usual clients just, even though I offered Zoom and things, they just stopped. And it's interesting that in a crisis situation, people want practicalities in terms of help rather than just talking about it. And, you know, like people who deal with others who have been affected by fire and things have said exactly the same thing. So it's, I think really it's about trying to create community and connectedness with the tools you have in the area that you're in. I'm lucky living outside of Geelong. We're not in the second lockdown, so life is gradually returning to something of normality. But I think mostly for people, if they can just show somebody something of kindness each day, doesn't have to be somebody that you know, and contact, like at the very first lockdown, I'm a great person for lists. And so I made 4 A4 sheets of paper. So one was things I liked to do, and I made a list of all the things I enjoy doing, and I would put a tick beside them every time I did them. And then there were the people I wanted to contact, and again I'd put a tick beside them going, yes, I've been in touch with these people. And I'm selling my property, so I never have any problems with things I need to do because there's always stuff to do. But I think doing as much face-to-face, you know, like, and sort of Zoom is as face-to-face as you can get on lockdown as possible. I've been very fortunate that my 17-year-old niece, I'd see every holidays, but I wouldn't get to talk to her during term time. But when I suggested we might FaceTime each week, she jumped at the chance. And some nights we can talk for 45 minutes. We just do it one night a week. And other nights it'll be 2.5 hours.
Oh, okay.
And we're still chatting away. So it just depends on what she and I were talking about at the time. But I think it's a time when you feel that you need to connect to the people who are important in your life, but recognizing who those are.
Because I found we got a new puppy, so I was taking our older dog and the puppy for a walk around the block, and I met, and because the puppy's only young, I would only do the short block, which only probably takes me 20 minutes, but it would take me some days 2 hours because I was meeting people and we'd have a chat, and people that I didn't even know lived in the neighbourhood because they couldn't go to work. So they're all out walking around the block, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that when you're locked down and there's a whole lot of things you're not allowed to do, suddenly there are things that you realise that you really miss, and it's those things that you need to take a mental note of and do more of. For me, it's always talking to people, and then I became a bit of a baker.
Oh yes, I did that, and I bought a slow cooker, and I made all these casseroles, and husband loved it, but the slow cooker is sort of not working as much as it was.
No. And I have to say, what I like doing with my baking was I then gave it to people. I dropped it off to people's houses as a way of sort of sharing a burden, if you like.
Yeah, no, that's great. Oh, well, I'd love to thank you, Sarah, for your time. It's been great chatting to you, and I'm sure our viewers have had a great insight. I think they're all telling me, I'm just looking at the comments, they found it very interesting, and there's no actual questions, but Judy said there was a great insight. So, yeah, thank you very much. And thanks for mentioning about COVID, and let's hope that things improve. Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful that we're not in the zone either, but we may get classified. I mean, my son can't go to school next week because his school's in the zone. So he'll be doing schooling from home again.
Did he find it okay to school from home?
He doesn't really like it. Yeah, he likes to interact with his friends and things. Yeah. So next Thursday at 6:30, it'll be an hour earlier, but we're going to be talking to Sonia Johnson. Sonia is a former eventing team medalist, silver medalist at the Beijing Olympics in 2008. She was also part of the bronze team at the World Equestrian Games in Aachen in 2006. She's also got amazing other achievements, and Sonia also works on the family farm in Albany, Western Australia, and we really look forward to catching up with her next week. So good night and have a great week, and hope to see you all next week at 6:30.
Look forward to tuning in then. Thanks a lot, Tanya.